Wait a minute, don't I know you? Well, we are blessed by your presence. I I do what? You mean you don't watch each one of them instantly as soon as they appear in your feed? Things have been going well. We're on the final countdown till Paige gets here. It's about 6 weeks until Paige is here, and yeah, and things will really start rolling, I think. And it's been Saskatoon berry, also known as service berries, but we call them Saskatoons around here. So it's been Saskatoon season. So I've picked about 120 pounds of these berries so far this week. Today might be the last day. Yeah, that's going to be a source of income for the farm, for the community type farm that we're going to run here. Because it's just in the bush, right? You just go foraging in the bush, and there's an infinite. Basically, this year was really good for berries, and it's basically infinite supply of berries just in the bush. So that's we're gonna freeze dry them and sell them. So and eat them too, of course. But we'll never starve. See, that's what's the great thing about here is that when the collapse happens, there's lakes all over the place. So there's infinite supply of fish. There's basically an infinite supply of berries as well, and wildlife all over the place. Deer, bear, bear, but deer, moose. So people will not try to kill other people and steal their food when this is all collapsing here because people will be able to get their own food. So this will be a very peaceful, relatively peaceful place to live as world food shortage manifests. I think that's the way it's going to, it seems to be that's the way it's going with food production is that it's a bumper year 1 year, and then the next year it's famine or flooding. It's like nothing's normal anymore. Either it's a really, really good year or like everything's dying. it's things are becoming very polarized and very zero sum game. It's either or. The high wild mountains. Well, that sounds cool. Yeah, the living in nature is the way to go for sure. Hmm. No, I'm saying it's a zero sum game, which means that there is a fork in the road and it's an either or coming up here. I think I think the species is going extinct, so that's kind of an either or situation. It's definitely something's going to happen when that happens. Something big. Yeah, I've been out here for just about 3 years now, and living in nature is it. Like, it's just so healing. There's just life out here, and it all gets along together. We all get along. See, I would like this this place to be an oasis, like a spiritual retreat center where people come to find their spirit, have a spiritual awakening. Um, well, the world financial system, the fiat monetary system is nearing its end. So that's a big deal. There's going to be a lot of turmoil through this transition. because I think it's going to just go into hyperinflation. So the entire world will be going through hyperinflation simultaneously because all the fiat is collapsing because it's not connected to the physical world anymore. And then there's the food. The increasing climate change is going to make it harder and harder, increasingly more difficult to grow food. Yeah, so yeah. And then there's this war thing, kind of wars and stuff. So I don't know, it's hard to predict even to the year how things are going to happen, when things are going to happen, but I know what things are going to happen. Society is going to collapse. I just don't know when and how hard and how fast. It's happening so slowly, like so subtly that the middle class is being eviscerated and they're losing their homes. And eventually, see, with inflation, it's so insidious that and people have forgotten the value of money, what money actually is. So it's meaningless, right? It's just numbers that doesn't mean anything anymore. So people just keep spending this meaningless, ethereal money, currency stuff. So everything's going to collapse back to simpler times, to simplicity. Basic needs, if you've got the skills for basic needs, like growing food and repairing stuff and building stuff, then you'll do okay, I think. But I think we're going to enter a third world war probably this year or next year. But see, the good news is, if there's any good news in this, in an approaching hell, is that everything, all of a person's effort should be switching to spirituality now, because there's no improving the state of humanity. It's just going to get worse and degrade, and just it's going to get worse. There's you can make, if you're going to make one bet, you're going to bet that everything's going to get just worse overall. The madness will continue and the starvation and all that stuff. So this it's all about spirituality. This life has always been about spirituality. That's the purpose of life, is it's spiritual in nature. So now we really need to, like, it's really becoming apparent that people should pay attention to their spiritual lives, because shit's hitting the fan. It's going to be really bad. And the degree of delusion within humanity makes it going to be worse, right? Because they can't see it. They can't see it happening. And then when it does happen, it's just like, oh, I didn't know that was going to happen. It's like, well, you were looking in the wrong places. You were looking where you wanted to look. You were looking for what you wanted to see. The mass of humans are going to flip. See, if there's such a thing as reincarnation, and it's an accurate description of what's going on, is that if there's no more human lives to enter into and experience, then what are you going to do? If you think that you're a human, and for however many, a million years or 200,000 years or whatever, you've just basically just been coming back as a human because the human population has been increasing. but now be, and it's all attention. Your attention is life, is the life energy, like E equals MC squared. Basically, your attention is the E. So it sounds crazy, but whatever you put your attention on the most, that's what's going to appear the most real. Nothing that appears is real. Nothing that's it's an easy one to remember. Nothing that you see and experience is real. But the more you pay attention to something, the more real it appears. So human consciousness in this physical realm has been paying attention to the senses, and that's been what we've taken to be fundamental reality. But now that's changing now. That the physical realm has lost its potential for novel experiences. We've experienced everything we can on this earth in the physical realm through the senses. So, as crazy as this sounds, because of humans' attention on the screen and into that camera, into the screen, that's where we're moving. So that's the big question. When will artificial intelligence become sentient and all that? It's when you take yourself to be the hardware and software of the system. That's in your world, that's when artificial intelligence becomes sentient, is when humanity makes that switch and is looking out of the camera instead of into it. So this stuff isn't crazy talk anymore. You can't even talk crazy after quantum mechanics, right? Like it doesn't get any crazier than quantum mechanics. So somehow, because of a quantum, the aspects of a quantum computer will make it possible somehow for consciousness to flip and look and believe that it's part of that system. And then it will believe that the I is basically the computer system. Right now, we think the I is the biological system. And then when the flip happens, that what took itself to be human consciousness it'll be a, a digital ego instead of a biological. But I don't understand how people think that that's cool. Like that's computer think that this allows for a little more freedom than thinking that you're inside a fucking computer. Humanity is devolving and we're convincing ourselves that it's evolution. And it's not. It's devolving. If we were evolving, we would be happy, right? If we were actually evolving like we're trying to convince ourselves that we are, don't you think we'd be happy? But instead, we're not happy. We're the opposite of happy. So we obviously must be doing the opposite of evolving. But good luck trying to get a human to admit that they're wrong. But there isn't. That's this is the difficult part for us to get our heads around, is that what we consider to be nothing, how do I put this? The something is the emptiness. That which appears to be full is empty, and that which appears to be empty is full. So, dreamless sleep, which appears to be nothing, that's actually the reality because we have it inverted. So, there's always the things come and go, but that which the things come and go upon is always there. And that's just awareness. And the awareness is timelessness. So there's a difference between infinity and timelessness. There's a huge difference between infinity and timelessness. Timelessness is infinity trying is time trying to infinity is trying to explain pure potential from the perspective of time. Yeah, I do. I believe that. So in the Bible, there's the second coming, right? But it's always just a select few. It's not everyone, right? It's just the really select few special people, the Christians, get to go, get to just basically not die and not go through the apocalypse. I think that's the story, right? So I believe while the vast majority of human consciousness that doesn't try to fight the screen, like just is full on gaming, just full on your average person, just completely helplessly addicted to the screen. So those people, most of them will end up believing that they're sentient beings inside of a computer and they'll have all the same karma, except it'll be going to be in a digital realm. And then the other, like, I would call it us, this group here, is going to take the other path, which is, I believe, remaining in the sensual realm, in the cosmos, if you will, and evolving to what I call planetary consciousness. It's like, because according to my model, the dimensions of this realm aren't dimensions you can see. This is what physics does, is like they make the rules, and then they tell us that everything abides by the rules that they made. So they think that a dimension is something you can measure with a fucking ruler. That's what a dimension is to them. But to me, dimensions are not something that you can just measure with a ruler. So the dimensions are quarks, subatomic particles, atomic, molecular, cellular, body, planetary, solar, galactic, and then universal, right? There's 10 dimensions. Those are them. And so the next dimension, the next step high into the next level of higher self-awareness, I believe, is planetary consciousness. Whatever that means, it means that a human consciousness transmits or transfers into basically Gaia. I, I don't know how that works, but there is a Gaia, there is planetary consciousness. And I believe that's the next step of evolutionary. So it's interesting that string theory says that there's four realms, and the world, the reality is split into four of these dimensions and six of these dimensions. So where are we? We would be quarks, subatomic, atomic, molecular, cellular, body. Six dimensions. So it's just interesting that it it seems like maybe that's the evolutionary. If we go by the numbers again, like I say, the number system is a map of samsara. And quarks, if we start at quarks, and that's one. So yeah, it just makes sense to me that the next step, that the six realms that string theory is talking about, is basically our past, which is inside the body, and then the next four are planetary, solar, galactic, and then finally the last one, universal. But that, yeah, the last one might be a trillion freaking years from now, right? Like, these are huge, relatively huge periods of time. I don't know what it means. I honestly don't. Like, I don't obviously I don't know what it would be like to have planetary consciousness. But there's something about that which is in the body, what you call in the body, but I don't believe that that's spatially, it's not even spatially separated, right? Like, when we're talking about these six dimensions, I believe they're time dimensions. Like, I wish I could have a chat with one premier freaking physicist dudes, because I believe that those six dimensions that we are probing with devices are our past. That is what we've already evolved through on this journey. And we shouldn't be messing around in there. Yeah, so thought is basically delving into our past, and that's holding us back. I believe that thoughts are coming from a time separated self, and that time separated self is our past that we've gone through already. We can't be looking back. It's like we're looking backwards, or we're looking in the rearview mirror, and we've just stopped any advancement in evolutionary self-awareness, and we're just stagnant right now. I don't, well, like Danissa, I don't know why you even listen to anyone else. Isn't it clear that I'm the one that understands everything? But it's very simple. Like, it's very clear to me. Like, the six dimensions that they're talking about is, ah, I see it so clearly. So if it's about iterations, and the biggest iteration, it stops at nine, right? So, like a clock that goes to nine only. So in the biggest, like, we would be the the six of the nine to end the one iteration, right? The biggest iteration of, like, all of the entire universe. Yeah. Yeah, it's the whole thing, right? Like, my model has the whole thing. It includes the whole thing. Yeah, so it's interesting. I think we're at the nine. Okay. No, we're at the 10 of the six, right? So six is body, right? So quarks, subatomic, atomic, molecular, cellular, body, biological. So but within each one of those, of course, is another cycle, right? Like, you could just add a hand to the clock that just goes at a different rate, right? It timing, counting each iteration of the other. You could have each hand could count the iterations of the other hands. That's what I'm saying, right? So if we're the six and seven is planetary, and we're at the 10 of the six. We're just about to go into the seven. So the seven would be planetary. But what I'm saying is that thought, which the source of thought is not found outside the body. It's not found in the four dimensions, right? It must be from the six dimensions. So we're at the 10 of the six, about to go into the seven, or drop back. We're dropping back. I didn't know that this was possible. That it seems like we're dropping back, right? So we might be going back to the five or four. Like we should not be messing around with these other dimensions. It's not intended to be this way, and that's why we're lost. It's because we're messing around in our past. We've already gone through all that. Yeah, and then you go with planets, and then you always take it. Yeah, you take it to further than I intended it to. That's the problem, though, is that you can't go too far, because then it's just like it almost loses its potency if you keep saying, "Oh, well, it's like this and like this and like this too." It's like, well, maybe it's not like those. Yeah, so we're at the 10 of the six. And then at 9, so that's what I think that's what I think happens if you just play the game. If you just say, "I'm all in all the way. I'm not going to try for enlightenment. I'm just going to experience everything that I possibly can experience in this game. I'm going all the way in the whole way, all the way to the end." That would be like, holy shit, if the physical realm, if the 6 is 13.8 billion years long, that's just the 6 is that long. Right, so we're talking, relatively speaking, immense periods of time, right? When you solve the mystery of the game, there's contentment, because you've you've conquered the game, right? Like there's a puzzle, right? It's a million piece puzzle, And then eventually, once you put that last piece in, it's done. And then it's just contentment. Yeah. So, yeah, surrendering is also a part of that, right? Because every time you find yourself trying, you think that you're trying to change something within the universe. That's just karma. That's you you think that you are changing the entire universe. Like that's what non-locality is with quantum mechanics. You can't just there's there's no free will happening. You're not there is so that's the futility of it all. So that's what suffering is all about when you're on the wheel of samsara, is that you think that you're doing all these things, but it's just the narrative. You're none of that is occurring. You're not making choices. There is no individually your name here that's making choices and doing all this stuff. That's not happening. So and that's the point. That's the point of this game, is to realize that. Realize the facade that's occurring. Reveal the mystery. It's all self-generating. And when you realize that all that trying, like all those thoughts, all that trying, all the effort and travails that you've gone through, and when you come to realize that all that's just narrative, it's none of it is true. It's just a story that the voice in the head is telling that has no relevance at all. There's a certain amount of freedom that comes with that for sure. At first, it's very distressing to think that everything that I've considered that I thought was going on, the narrative I was telling was just a story, that none of it was actually true. That's and that's why people don't want to listen to this message, right? Is because it's so difficult to accept that everything that you thought about the world was wrong. It's all just an illusion. You were duped the whole time. People don't want to admit that. Yeah. A person will suffer and suffer and suffer and suffer, and then I'll show them the cause of their suffering, and they won't admit it because it's even more suffering to try to break through the addiction, right? To go cold turkey off of thought is harsh. Yeah, I would if anyone really gave a shit. I'm s- I still think I need a connector. I still think that I need to get through to someone that has authority. There's a new prospect. Seems like every couple of weeks I find someone that's like, well, they're so close to my theory that maybe they could see it. Federico Fagin, Faggin, Federico Fagin. He's got to be the one. Please, please be the one. Please, one of these people, please. So if you look at time as the separation between events, okay? So space is the separation between objects, and time is the separation between events. Then if there are no thoughts, then there's no separating events, right? If you, let's say Ramana Maharshi had no thoughts entering, no words entering his consciousness, then there would be no separate events, would there? His life would be just one event, right? So if your life is just one event, then where's the time in that? So if you're not separating like a birthday, right? That steps it sticks out in your consciousness as something. So that's an event. And then you can dream up another event, right? You put a bunch of pieces together and there's another event. And then the separation between those two events is the appearance of time. But the appearance of those events arising all happen in presence, right? It all happens in presence. See, clocks are just agreed upon frames of reference. They're not measuring anything. A clock is not measuring anything. It is an agreed upon frame of reference. That's all. It just goes around and around and around. It's not measuring anything. We put the numbers on it, right? We put the numbers on it. And we're so fixated on these fucking numbers that it just becomes programmed that there is something that's happening that's called time. But it's just like objects. If there's no words entering your consciousness, there's no appearance of separately existing objects either. So thought is the cause of all of it, right? Thought, words, is the appearance of separately existing objects and the appearance of separately existing experience. So again, thought is the projector of the illusion. That voice in the head is tricky. That's why it's Satan. Sorry to break it to you, but the voice in your head is Satan. But I believe it's more ignorance than it is intentionally trying to deceive. I don't know. Whether it's ignorance or whatever it is, it's deception. The voice in the head is the deception that we followed, and it's led us to our demise. It's the voice in the head is the source of our cancerousness. Cancerousness? Sure, it's a word. Is that a kitty? Yeah, that's it. Again, it's far more nuanced and complicated than one analogy can do service to it, right? So that's why it's not that the universe is a game, it's games are the reality, right? Games are a fractal expression of the reality, right? So playing, right? Playing, acting, they're expressions of what God is doing in this game, right? It's a game. There are games. We love our games, don't we? Because this is a game that God is playing. That's why there are games. That's why there is acting. That's why there is irony. Because the irony is that you're looking for yourself. You are that which is you, which is that you are what you're looking for. So the irony and humor in that, right? So even humor, my my theory even explains where humor comes from. How many mathematical theories of everything can explain where humor comes from? But the final move is letting go, though, right? The final lift, like you can't carry that burden with you, right, all the time. So the final move is the letting go. So the workout actually is just letting go of things after you've picked them up again, right? Let go of that attachment over and over and over and over. Yeah, that's it. The letting go is the exercise. That's it. Yeah. And learning not to pick it up. Yeah, not to pick it up again. It's like, ah. No, I don't want to pick it up again. I'll just have to let it go later. Well, if they were to admit it, if they were to admit that the entire mathematics endeavor is actually an error, then that would be ironic, wouldn't it? But I don't think they'll find the humor in it. They haven't so far. They haven't found the humor in that they're in the entire mathematical endeavor has been in error, the whole thing. And the problem is because the problem is that it works to make shit, right? We just overlook what the shit actually does, right? The technology, what it actually does destroy all life on the planet and get humanity completely addicted to the technology, completely reliant upon the technology, addicted to it, and then also that technology at the same time is killing all biological life on the planet. So maybe we should rethink what math is. But no, it works. So we're just going to keep building stuff. And it keeps mathematicians interested. So we're just going to keep mathing, even though I have a completely reasonable, simple, elegant argument to prove that math is actually incorrect. All of it, the whole fucking thing. But it just sounds so ludicrous, right? It sounds like something a crazy person would say. So they just shrug it off as 99.9999997% of the rest of the crazy people who've said the same thing over all of history, right? So unfortunately, all the crazy people have really messed it up for me because they weren't wrong. They were just wrong. They didn't know how they were right. Right. So Terrence Howard has an idea that there's something fishy going on with math. And there is. It's quantity. Quantity is the fishy thing going on with math. It's imagined. Quantity might as well be unicorn. It makes no sense. It's just quantity is 1 plus 1 equals 2. There's some sort of imaginary force that's holding these objects together in a set. There's some sort of magical force. Just it's called imagination. That force is called imagination that holds and two, I can't even use the word two, separate, like, objects that have nothing to do with each other, well, into a some sort of a whatever the fuck quantity is. No one can even explain what quantity is. What's its purpose? It's just to shuffle money around. Quantity is there to control the physical world, to basically label it and control it. So you got me started on math. Way to be. I got a big problem with math, eh? I should try DMT. I've never done it. So the psychedelics. So in my model, I just put psychedelics under mind. So there's body, there's sensual experiences, which is body, and then there are non-physical, non-sensual experiences, which I call mind. So mind is the voice in the head, dreams, your mind's eye, right? Your imagination, and psychedelic trips. That's that's mind for me. So yeah, it's a different realm. To me, that's there should only be to me, there should be one distinction and it should be very sharp. So keep things very succinct and simple, but very sharp and defined. That's it. Simple, sharp, well defined, with as few variables as possible. So yeah, that's the mind realm. That's all I can say is that's all mind realm because it's interior to the body, right? It's not part of the five senses. Yeah, so we could just, if we want to make a model of all of reality, then just throw that all into mind, right? There's a mind category, there's a body category. It's pretty obvious what this is in my model. It's not all mumbled up like most models of consciousness where they all just throw it all in the same set and then they try to organize it within the same set, right? It's all just firings of neurons in the brain, so there's no distinction between what's inside and outside. What there's no distinction between the senses and the voice in the head, and that's where the distinction needs to be made. That's where the sharp line needs to be sharp. The line between the body and the mind needs to be really well defined. Then we can start making some freaking progress. See, people get caught up in the details, right? They get caught up in the weeds. It's like, well, what if this isn't mind? What if this goes over here? It doesn't fucking matter. As long as everything's taken care of, and either in this basket, the mind basket, or the physical basket, the mind basket or the body basket, all experience needs to fit in one of these baskets. Now, whether one's over here and one's over there, it's kind of irrelevant. It's all, if you understand the triune system, that's all that matters. So just get it all so it fits into two things, and then those two things are the one thing. And but that one thing is undefinable. It's not a thing. I can fix all of this, but people don't want it to be fixed because they know that this is the most important part of all of the revelations for these guys, for anyone, is that you know you exist while you're thinking. So therefore, the those who use that formula for their relative form of existence, their inferred existence, well, that's what they're going to go to. That'll be their default. So they'll always just come back to their thinking, even when I present to them the obvious conclusion to the process that they're trying to, the theory of everything, the final concluding theory. But it won't conclude if you know that you exist only when you're thinking, right? Your ego will ignore the answer that stops the thinking because your ego is the thinking. So this is why I present people with the final concluding theory, the people that say that they're looking for one and they don't see it because they don't want to see it, because they want to keep thinking, because they know they exist while they're thinking. Yeah, I even have that all laid out for everyone and they still don't fucking see it, right? Because that's the level of delusion that people are in. It's like talking to a cult member. Talking to an academic is like talking to a cult member, and that cult worships the voice in the head, right? So they don't question the voice in the head, they worship it. And anyone that challenges that voice in the head is crazy. Nothing. No, this the soul is people's idea of a soul is a little bit askew because the self doesn't move. So the soul, the idea of a soul is half right because the self never passes, right? The self cannot not exist. But it's not the self that arises and passes within the world. It's the other way around. The world arises and passes within self. So it's the world that comes and goes within self. So if you look at dreamless sleep as being the reality, and life, what we call life, the waking state, arises and passes on the backdrop of dreamless sleep, right? So dreamless sleep is there all the time, just like the night sky is there all the time, right? And it is in expansiveness, infinite expansiveness. But when the brain is active, when there's thoughts and sensations in the waking state, then that's the same as the sun being out, and it's obscuring the blueness is obscuring the daytime sky is obscuring the nighttime sky, but it's always there, right? So the night sky space is always there. It's just that in the waking state we can't see it, right? So the self is always there and it's not what's moving, right? The waking state, the world and thoughts and time and experience arise all simultaneously with the ego upon waking. So it's the world that's arising and passing and moving, not the self. Hi, Paige. Yeah, I always include body as part of the world. So just imagine being aware in dreamless sleep. So nothing moves, right? You're not moving. Time arises and passes through you, right? Time flows through you, not the other way around. The appearance of time flows through you. I don't know, you if you question death, maybe you can find out what life is all about. But that's what Ramana did, right? He was questioning death. He was looking into what the phenomenon of death. But Ramana could see that there was no father. There's no there are no individuals. It's just a story. So again, we're always talking from a time-based perspective, right? So you can't even, it's like not even apples and oranges. It's like nuclear bombs and oranges. Like it's just like, yeah. So awareness is the frame of reference. So that's what nirvana is, right? Like nirvana is conclusion, the blowing out of the candle. So consciousness is permanently interlinked with awareness, but awareness is not linked to consciousness. It's a one-way relationship, right? It's not, this is where the non-dualists have it all. The nuance of it is important. You can't say that I'm the world and the world is me. You can't say that. You can say the world is me, but I'm not the world. So yeah, you can have awareness without content, like in dreamless sleep, like the death state, like the extinction state, whichever size of the iteration you're talking about. In between those states, just like in between thoughts, there is the awareness, right? So awareness doesn't require consciousness, consciousness requires awareness. The reflection in the mirror requires that which is looking into the mirror, and that which is looking into the mirror does not require the reflection, right? That's how it's going. The character in a play does requires the actor, right? The actor does not require the character, obviously. So that which is sleeping does not require the waking state. I found our Neo solution seeker. This is it. This is finally the one. Is it Federico Fagin? Federico Faggin. He's the guy. He's the one. I've spoken. He's the Neo that's going to bring this to the world. I'll maybe I'll try to provide a link without. Why do they have that heart right where I want to freaking do stuff? There. Yeah. I'd like to be Neo, but no one will fucking listen to me. Did I talk to what? To who? No shit, no. He's a big deal. These big deal guys don't talk to me. We'll see. It's only I've only contacted him. It's only been about a week since I contacted him. So, but that video is like he's had awakening experience. So here's the thing. At the end of the video, he's talks about wanting a new method of inquiry, a new physics. Of course, I have to convince him that we need to drop physics completely to move on. But he said at the end, he says, I would really like in my continuing work to provide people the experience that he had. So he had an awakening experience. And like I keep saying, is that you won't understand this until you had the experience, right? So he literally said, he literally said, even if it's something that you have to do once a year for a week to really get have this spiritual awakening experience, you won't really follow, right? So he's saying that you need the experience first. So, and that's exactly what I want here. This is exactly what I'm going to present to him because I've got the float tank. He's talking about tools that will help instigate these spiritual experiences and a spiritual awakening with someone so that they will get interested in this and start the practice. So I'm going to contact him. I'm going to say, listen, I've got salvia, I've got a float tank, I've got a magical place in the most beautiful spot in the world, basically. Like if if you can't have if you're not going to have a spiritual experience a week of intensive meditation practice here, then you won't. You're just not ready to have a spiritual experience. So I'm going to present to Federico that this be one of those spots where people come for a week every year to have a spiritual experience. Like salvia is a spiritual experience, and a float tank is a spiritual experience. So this is a perfect place for him to conduct his studies. but he's got a couple of problems. So solution seeker, maybe you can help me with this. From my understanding of non-locality, that free will can't work with non-locality. Is that your understanding? Like non-locality is basically quantum mechanics saying that everything happens at once, right? So if everything happens at once, you can't possibly free will, right? Talk to me, man. It's one of the axioms of his theory is that the one the yeah, I do have my own float tank. Yeah. So he says that the one wants to know itself, which I've got covered with the fundamental processes awareness coming back onto itself. But then he says that there's free will. But he recognizes that free will, he uses the word modicum of free will. So he understands that free will might not be as free as we think it is. But then he also says that the process is getting closer and closer to ourselves. But then he also contradicts himself and says that the process never ends. So that's a big problem. How can you use the word closer? Closer is a meaningless word when you're talking about something that never ends. So he's got some subtle problems with his theory because how can the unfolding of increasing self-awareness, increasing doesn't make any sense if it goes forever, right? So he's missing something there because you have to have room for an enlightenment. You have to have potential for conclusion. And his model doesn't offer any potential for conclusion. That's why his model keeps going on forever. And I believe that's why non-dualists, their model includes suffering within enlightenment for this very reason. So if there is free will, right? So he's kind of painted himself into a corner, maybe. But but doesn't non-locality kind of prove that free will doesn't exist? You can't possibly have free will, right? There can't be a bunch of individual people just doing whatever the hell they want in the same world and have non-locality. See, that's an illusion. I believe that the way we describe our actions is the illusion, right? So you didn't actually have the choice. We don't actually have the choice to do anything other than what we're doing. We have the choice to describe perhaps the frame of the movie, each individual frame of each movie might always be the same, but perhaps the way in which we describe that frame, each frame is finite, right? So there's a finite way in which we can describe the experiences that we're having, but we can't change the experiences that we're having. I don't believe we can change anything about the experiences we're having. We can change the way in which we describe the experience, which in turn changes the experience. It changes the appearance of the experience. That's the only choice we have, I think. The choice is veto power, right? So the final free will, the choice that we have is to pay where we place our attention. That's where we have free will. So if a thought comes up, I want to watch Roy or I want to watch the news on the war, you just witness whichever one of those happens. And the other one couldn't possibly have happened. What doesn't happen, what doesn't make sense as part of the narrative couldn't possibly have happened. And that's where the multiverse people just think that it all could have happened. But it couldn't have because it didn't. But see, that's the thing is it's deeper than whether there's free will or not, right? So this is again, it's like the question is in error, right? It's not whether there's free will it's not whether you have a choice to make or not. It's whether there's someone there to even make a choice. You see what I mean? The nuance to this is very subtle, but it's very profound because I know what you're talking about. There's no The idea of free will itself is illusion, right? It's not like we're debating whether there's unicorns or not, right? We're debating whether there's pink unicorns. That's what we're doing. When we say, is there free will? What they're really doing is debating whether there are pink unicorns, right? There aren't unicorns. So there isn't even a possibility of free will. So people are debating whether something that's impossible exists or not. See what I mean? That's the whole because we just start with the assumption that there's a separately existing self that's making these choices. That's the status quo, right? That's the default is that there is a self, an individual existing self that's making choices. So therefore, so they're not asking whether there's a separately existing person identity that's making choices. They're asking whether those choices are there or not, and I'm asking whether the person's there or not. Right? They're asking whether the choices are there or not, and the question should be: is there anyone there to make the choices or not? Right? That's the level at which I'm trying to explain free will. Does it make sense? The subtleties of it when someone says, is there free will or not? See, does someone have free will is different than is there free will, right? I love this shit. I love the nuances of this, subtleties of this. There's a difference between saying that a person has free will and saying whether there's free will or not. There needs to be a distinction between that. I'm saying that there's no free will. I'm not saying that a person doesn't have free will. I'm saying that there's no free will. I don't like people get confused with these subtleties and nuances, but I just love it. It just seems so apparent and obvious to me. Yeah. So it's not like there's a person that does or does not have choices to make. It's that there's no person. That's the level of that's the degree to which there is no free will. There's no such thing as free will. Yeah, all of human endeavor basically is trying to keep the ego intact. Is the all of human endeavor is the act of projecting the ego. And when a person suggests that maybe we should do something else, that doesn't go over very well. They exist, they just don't exist the way they think they do. I hate that when like I see titles like reality doesn't exist, reality is an illusion. It's like, do you understand words? Like you just made a nonsensical statement. Reality is an illusion. It's like, no, what you think is reality is wrong. That's the way you should state it. How you view reality is wrong. Your idea of what is real is an illusion. That's the way they should say it. The realm projected by physics is an illusion, but they don't say that. They say reality is an illusion. What the fuck? What do you mean reality is an illusion? You mean your idea of reality is an illusion? Right. When someone dies, nothing really happens. God, I don't even want to be associated with those freaking philosophers. The most deluded bunch on the planet is the gang at Philosophy Now website discussion forum. So free will is an illusion. If non-locality holds, free will is an illusion. But I do believe that if my variables were plugged into the equation, I think someone could make some progress into actually describing this world. So I think that the choice that everyone's hung up on, right? So the way that the multiverse can actually work and what they're trying to express is that the fundamental choice might be the choice as to what life you enter. Like back in the day when you went to Blockbuster and you chose a DVD to play, that's a fundamental choice. And all that nonsense that goes on, the narrative that goes on that DVD, that's just narrative. It's not changing anything that's on the DVD at all, right? It's all hard copied on the DVD, and that's the choice that you make. So all the choices that appear within that playing of that DVD and that character is all illusory, right? So that's the multiverse. The multiverse is other people. So the your possible world line, all possible world lines of you that you could have taken is other people. The multiverse is other people. So you have to pare down what you think of choice as the choice to enter this life. There's one choice per life. So that's the equation. And I think that this would work. Somehow this would work. I think to actually describe this world instead of going into infinite multiverses that's just having the world split off into two with every choice that every person on the planet makes. It's totally insanity. It's the wooiest of all the woo is multiverse. Might as well be the plot line of some freaking Marvel movie. Well, it is. That's part of the programming. It's like, we're gonna make a bunch of movies about the multiverse so we can program it into consciousness that it's actually the way things are. I think the multiverse is the same as all possible paths, right? So if you have a thought that comes into your head that I could be doing something other than what I'm doing, well, that's just bullshit narrative. You can't possibly be doing something other than what you're doing, obviously. Well, I became a chair when I took salvia once. Just merged with the chair. Interesting. See, what's actually happening is that each sense comes in one at a time, but it seems like they're overlapped, but it just happens so fast. It's like a movie track, right? Where they add the audio onto the video later on. So they're just these senses just keep getting superimposed on each other as we go along. And the image, the holographic image keeps getting more holographic. I don't know, more multifaceted, multidimensional, literally more multidimensional. So imagine like if you could add smell to the movie. So now they added thought to the movie, right? So now, but the movie, that addition of thought to the movie has really changed things. But basically, this is like a movie where the senses all come in at different times, but the brain, I guess, kind of overlaps them all and constructs a holographic image that is our experience. But there's nothing really there. Like it's not out there. Our senses are projecting the world, not detecting it. All the years, well, it's all relative, right? Like, it all depends on your memory, right? Like, if you don't have memory that lasts, let's say you can't remember anything 50 years or older, then if you're lived to be 500 years, then you'd only remember 50-year chunks. It's all relative, right? It doesn't matter really if you live 20 years or if you live 200 years. It doesn't really matter. The point is to escape this puzzle. The point is not time put in the game, but I guess if we're keeping score and if there's a hall of fame somewhere, I guess it'd be the quickest way. The people who get out of this game the quickest would be the best. Their names would be in the hall of fame for the highest score. Ramano must be up there pretty because he was like enlightened at 16, so he's got to have a pretty good score. Kids. Yeah, veto power. It's like we don't get a choice as to what the YouTube algorithm is going to suggest, but we have the choice to not click on the suggestion, right? But that's the thing, is that do we? If you relinquish even that amount of free will, like the ability to say no to the algorithm, that's bad. That's You need to be able to say no to the algorithm. You need to be able to use that veto power to know how to veto things rather than just mindlessly follow them, right? Ever since I heard about that that parasite that can control, like, the the actions of bodies to be their host, to do their bidding, is creepy. So I think that's the narrative. I think that's the most accurate narrative, is that the biological narrative, anyway, of what's going on with human consciousness is that we're infected by a parasite, and that parasite is the ego. Like, it's all metaphor. It doesn't matter whether it's literal or not. It's all metaphor. So the parasite is the ego, and that is siphoning the energy, the life force that is your attention. So it's siphoning your attention, your life energy, to give it self life. That's what's occurring. The voice in your head is pulling your attention, siphoning your attention to give life to the parasite. Because of, and it's controlling us through symbol and language. This is how it's controlling us, because it's the zero dimensional, right? It's time dimension. The source of thought is not in the sensual realm, it's in the time realm. Ah, so it's language is how that parasite, it's what's happened is it's learned to mimic the auditory communication that goes on within nature. So I got to walk around in nature, and there's birds chirping and coyotes howling and stuff going on, right? So that is the natural auditory way of communicating in live, like live person in your world, your sensual world. And this parasite has learned to mimic in consciousness that auditory response, right? The auditory way of communicating live in the natural world. That parasite has mimicked that within consciousness. And it's the voice in the head and language that is, so the visual aspect of it is language, right? The symbols. So auditory, voice in the head, visual. So it's hijacking us, our attention, using, manipulating, mimicking the visual realm and the auditory realm of communication. And it's working. Like, we are being communicated to by our past ego through language, and we are being devolved because of that. Yeah, it's a good narrative. It's the perfect. If biologists were to start following this in science, I guarantee you this would be the narrative. This is what they would find. They would find, oh my God, there's like a space parasite that has entered the human body, biological body, and it's controlling it through the thoughts. This is exactly what the narrative would be. Yes, it's mimicking, right? It's literally like like a virus, right? Uses it, it tries to get the key, right? It mimics the proper key to open the freaking cell, open up, so the cell opens up so you can give it new information, right? That's what's happening. So it mimics the natural state of the operation of the system, right? To hijack that system. It's so obvious. I know, right? It's zombies. This is probably the closest description on the biological narrative of what's happening, I believe. It's like a fucking space parasite or some fucking thing that's mimicking the auditory sense to control us. And it's working really well. But it's really important, okay? So this is the thing, is that it's it's vital. It's vital to recognize that this is all metaphor, right? It doesn't matter whether someone literally finds a literal parasite that's in the body that's doing this. It's just narrative, but it's a good narrative. It seems to make sense to explain what's occurring within humanity, because we're nuts, right? We're fucking crazy, and we're no longer a part of the natural flow of things. Yeah, Green Lantern. The biggest, the the best thing he could come up with was a big punch. Default mode network. Maybe. The eye. Yeah, the parasite is the I, right? It's the ego. It's the parasite is the ego. It literally doesn't exist, and it only exists while you're paying attention to it. Yeah, it's the game. It's God is deliberately playing. Well, this is probably my last day of berry picking, so I'm gonna go out there and pick some berries before they all rot. Stay strong, my non conceptualist friends.